Hey, welcome to my Warframes Where They Are Now series, a little series I've had brewing in the back of my mind since the early days of Warframe, quote unquote. I'm going to put this little intro at the beginning of every video in this series. If you've heard this once or more, feel free to skip it. This is just my opinion and is not guaranteed to be fact. Remember, with Warframe, everyone plays at least a little different from each other. That's why there's 52 frames as of making this intro, of course. That being said, I do plan on being as objective as I can with this series. But bias will always be a potential problem and will definitely shine through in certain episodes, if not all. Now, that being said, I hope you enjoy the series. October 7th, 2023. I hope you all find this as funny as I do. Today we're talking about the Shadow Stalker, because, well, it's an option, so I definitely have to include it. Base stats on Shadow Stalker are 262 armor, 425 energy, 1,110 health, 555 shields, 1.2 sprint speed, 29.5 tower resistance, 155% duration, 100% efficiency, 145% range, and 144% strength. Now, the reason why I listed as such is because you can't change the mods whatsoever, which also means we're skipping over the My Build section, of course. But I will say, my god, that implies he has absolutely no armor. Because he has umbral fiber on. Like, holy shit, he has, like, no armor. Like, somebody in the comments do the math on that. I am genuinely curious, but I suck at percentages, so I'm not even gonna bother. Shadowstalker's passive is, he gets 300% critical chance against enemies who do not see him. That's a pretty damn vicious passive, and I kinda wish that in a frame outside of Shadowstalker had it. But it's nice that he does. His first ability is Teleport. Gee, I wonder what the hell that does. But memes aside, he teleports to an enemy and performs a finisher, and if the finisher kills the target, he regains a portion of energy that he spent. I've never been a fan of these types of abilities. I actually removed it from Clervo pretty much immediately. Because I don't really care for that style of ability, particularly because my primary weapon is my Nakanaza with Blind Justice stance, so oftentimes they just straight up miss. But anyways, I will say this one's actually kind of nice. It also depends on what weapon you get as to whether it's going to be nice or not, but ultimately speaking, because of the extra damage, it usually does pretty well as long as you're not in Steel Path, which we'll get to later. His second ability is Marked. You stun a target, and when the target dies, a portion of the damage dealt to the target is dealt to other nearby enemies. It has a pretty large casting range. The explosion range ain't half bad either, being at 21.75 meters. And the damage buff isn't too bad either. I will say it's basically a weaker version of that twofold Torment decree, but until you get that, if you get that anyway, with all the extra decrees, it's not a guarantee anymore. Because realistically, you're not going to run long enough to be guaranteed to get it. But anyways, it's pretty solid for what it is. His third ability, he ripped straight off of Ash, and that is Smokescreen. He casts a shadow that stuns enemies and obscures their vision, briefly making Stalker invisible. The duration is 18.6 seconds, and the radius is 14.5 meters. I will say it's actually pretty solid, alongside his passive. I will say without the passive, I'd have been like, why? What the fuck's the point? But that passive saves this ability. So I guess in that regard, it's pretty damn good. I will can also cover your ass if you're running low on health. You could throw this down and get to cover. But yeah, ultimately what you're realistically going to be using this for is for that passive. Getting the extra critical chance. Alright, his fourth ability is Punishment. Absorb incoming damage and then cast it back at enemies with a barrage of energy projectiles. He's invulnerable for 3.1 seconds, and the damage multiplier is 13.27 times the damage that you take in. It can be pretty potent. I will say this one is one of the few that would be really nice in Steel Path. Again, we'll get to that in a minute, but it is odd. It doesn't really feel stalkery to me, but to be fair, other than maybe giving him another laser ballet from Revenant, there really isn't a good way to do a fourth ability on him, I feel. But either way, it's really cool and it's fun to use. As goofy as it sounds sometimes. So how does this frame perform in Deviri? Well, in regular Deviri, he's a lot of fun to use. He's a bit of an oddball, but he's fucking great. In Steel Path, not so much. I will say that low armor really, really hurts him. But if you're not alone, he's actually pretty serviceable, especially if you get, say, a Wisp or maybe even a Harrow with you. He can be pretty nasty. I will say, with the invisibility, he's not completely fucking useless or anything. Far from it, in fact, but he's definitely not my first pick, and I've only used him in Steel Path a couple times because of this. But, yeah, no, like, he's alright as far as Steel Path goes, but he's fucking awesome to use for regular Deviri. I almost always take him in regular Deviri. Shadowstalker is a frame that I find kind of interesting to think about. You know, I know we probably won't get a chance to use him outside of Deviri, aside from, like, a quest where we're able to use him. I do hope that at some point we'll get him in our arsenals. I don't think that's going to happen unless some crazy lore bullshit happens, like, I don't know, Shadowstalker's on our side for good, or something. I will say I would be down for that, especially considering that means we'd get to throw whatever mods we want on him, because, let's face it, this is not the best build that he could have. The one thing that scares me, though, is that tiny, tiny armor value. I mean, no wonder he gets fucking one-shot by most other 10-0. You know? Like, Jesus Christ, man, he's made out of paper. But, all jokes aside, though, he is a really cool case. I do hope to see more usage for him outside of Degree, although I know that's probably not going to happen anytime soon, if at all. But, that'll be it. Thank you all for watching, and have yourselves a good one.